Hey everyone, welcome to Tickets to Travel, the business of travel experiences. On today's episode, you'll meet Christine Osazuwa, Chief Strategy Officer with Shoobs. What is Shoobs? Shoobs is building the most engaged community by providing access to Black culture through experiences. Providing access to concerts, festivals, clubbing, comedy nights, dating events, and more while creating engaging editorial content and supporting event organizers and brands. Shoobs is the premier lifestyle brand for urban culture. Make sure to subscribe where you listen to podcasts and stay with us because Tickets to Travel starts now. Welcome to Tickets to Travel, the only podcast that talks about the business of travel experiences. And today we have Christine Osazuwa from Shoobs. She's the Chief Strategy Officer and also the founder of Measure of Music. Christine is originally from Baltimore. She holds degrees in music marketing and data science and combined those passions into roles in data and marketing at Universal Music Sweden and Warner Music Group in London. Currently, Christine is the Chief Strategy Officer for ticketing and event marketing startup Shoobs, where she leads their marketing and brand partnership strategy. In addition, she sits on the board of the Live Association, Indie Venue Week, and Key Change US. Christine is also the founder of Measure of Music, part conference, part hackathon, which introduces music and data to others while highlighting majority, minority attendees and speakers. Christine, welcome to Tickets to Travel.
Thank you so much for having me, Mario. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. And you and I have a little bit of a shared background, obviously, but I think what's important to highlight here is that when we talk about travel experiences, I'm more the travel guy. And what we're looking at is how does this play into the music industry? And are artists and promoters and managers looking at travel as a means to create super fans? And so I think it's great to get some just background, like what initially drew you to the music industry and how did you navigate your career path from booking shows as a teenager to becoming a chief strategy officer at Shoobs?
Oh gosh, what drew me to the music industry at first was, I love music. I know that's such an obvious answer, but there's always music in my home from a very young age. And so I realized really early on, my earliest recollections of like being a child was with music.
Right.
So I realized early on I loved music. And then it took probably another 6 or 7 years till I understood that it was an industry that you could have a job in. And so the first time I watched the MTV Music Awards, and I remember watching the Music Awards, the artists got, I can't remember what the artist was anymore. Artists got up on stage, they thank God, they thank their parents, and they started thanking other people. And I was like, cool, who are the other people?
Oh, right.
We want to thank people.
Yeah, yeah. How do I get to the party? How do I get the credit up there?
Who are you thinking? I want to be thanked.
Yeah.
And so I remember that was my first thought process where I'm like, clearly these people are important enough for them to receive an award, get on stage and say thank you to them. So how do I become one of those people? I think I was probably 11 or 12 years old at the time and I realized this was a thing, a possibility. And then I kind of never looked back from there. I started booking shows when I was 15, basically. I started helping artists with their street teams.
What was the first like show that you booked? I think this is fascinating.
So the first show I ever booked was my 16th birthday party. I am from Baltimore, and there is a band called All Time Low. I'm also from Baltimore, and they headlined my 16th birthday party, and it sounds much more impressive now than it was because they're only 2 years older than me, and they're from the same town I'm from. They were just local band.
That's amazing. That's kind of like, I have a story like that because I went to high school with the guys from Papa Roach. Do you remember that band?
Amazing. Yeah, of course. The stars, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they became like, we used to trade CDs. That's how old I am. We had CDs and we would trade them in Spanish class. And so I sort of try to take credit that I might have introduced them to some hip hop artists, but then they, of course, blew up and became amazing. Yeah. So it's kind of a similar situation. So you booked All Time Low for your 16th birthday. That's awesome.
It was really fun. But yeah, that's how that's my one of my first big things. Music. Actually, prior to that, I was working with artists. I was working with the bands in my area to do like street team. I managed a lot of like artist street teams. I did some of their like digital marketing back in the MySpace days. I discovered I loved marketing really early on, and that's kind of like how it all started. And I started a magazine when I was young about local music, stuff like that, basically.
Wow. So what's funny during this whole process of trying to talk to people within my network who are into travel and experiences, I run into a ton of businesses that have very unique names. And so as the chief strategy officer at Shoobs, can you tell us a little bit about where the name came from and what you are focused on there?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, Shoobs is basically a Black British slang term for a party, closest to like a house party, actually. And so my boss, our CEO, she decided to go with that name because she basically thought it was a nod to the culture of the Black British culture that we were focused on, and also a catchy name, obviously,
Sure.
simultaneously, and also one that like the URL was taken at, so that's helpful.
That's everything, actually.
Not exactly. It's really, really a big deal that we own Shoobs.com. Given that, but yeah, the company itself. So we do event ticketing, event marketing, some artist marketing, different kind of partnerships, things along those lines, but specifically focused on Black music and culture. So piano, Afro beats, jazz, soul, hip hop, kind of the wide swath. And then kind of like ancillary to that, we also end up focusing a lot on other type people of culture, people of color culture.
Right.
So we have things like anime nights. Well, we have things like Desi or slash Indian comedy nights, all kinds of
Right.
fun stuff. I like live Latin events where the entire description of the event is in Spanish. I'm like, well, I hope they're having a good time. I cannot read that.
Right. Amazing. And you're the primary ticketer, so you also work as a promoter as well at Shoobs?
No. So we are the primary ticketing provider.
Okay.
The UK is an allocation-based region rather than the US, which tends to be an exclusivity region. So we are primaries, but we are not promoters. We just help a lot with marketing. We've been around for about 10 years, so we're able to get a lot of guidance, even to everywhere from like first-time promoters all the way up to very seasoned promoters with our own database of our users for 10 years at this point, as well as like various digital platforms and channels that we use to help and support our promoters, but we don't put on our own events. At least not yet.
Got it. Yeah, that's a whole nother world, right? When you get into actually putting on the events.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly a whole different work.
Exactly. We could cover that later on. But okay, so one of the things that kind of inspired me to kind of focus on this niche is, and I'm not really a Swiftie, but like Taylor Swift, right? Like she has provided the impact economically around her shows, especially here in North America. It's estimated around 5 billion of added impact into the economy. And of course, she's now going to the UK over the summer. And so you've been in the music industry for a while now. There's obviously this big trend to creating super fans. And from a label perspective, what do you think are the advantages for artists to create travel experiences for their fans?
Yeah. So yeah, I've spent some time at major label, almost 5 years at major label. And I think there is like now very much a big push for super fans. I was seeing it as I was there and it's continued to grow. And I think there's a lot of reasons why you might want to put together a travel experience. One is because like it's a really large combination of an artist's kind of vision,
Yep.
basically. If you think about an album being like, this is like a moment in time for my vision as an artist,
Right.
I think a travel experience is very similar to that, where this is the everything from the aesthetic, the vibe, the food, like everything.
Vibes,
You can
yes.
have the full vision. And that's something that's incredibly attractive to fans, obviously. We take it outside the context of music for a moment and think about other experiences that are fully immersive in that way. A big one might be like the Harry Potter Park at Universal Studios, right?
Yep.
It's a pilgrimage for Harry Potter
my
fans,
gosh.
right?
Yeah.
They get dressed up, they film, they interact. People that were squarely born in the 1980s are playing with wands and like in the park. A whole experience. If you think about that, it's like what that looks like from like a music festival or something that's fully branded for an artist. I don't even think we have anything quite as in depth as something along those lines. Some examples of cool artists that have been doing this for a really long time that people I don't think give enough credit to would be like artists like Grateful Dead.
Oh my
They've done
gosh.
really in like that is their world. You know what you're walking into when you go to a Grateful Dead event of any sort at this point.
Right.
Things like that have been going on for a really long time. And I think it's becoming kind of more mainstream over the last few years for artists that are not as kind of like, I don't know, like I wouldn't say fringes, but as close to the fringes of like the Grateful Dead are exploring what it looks like to put together their own kind of events.
I mean, that's huge. I mean, have you seen the clips from the Sphere, the Dead and Company? Oh man, Fish, even you too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a whole different venue conversation, but from a travel experiences, I mean, I couldn't think of a better destination to do that in Las Vegas. But that's interesting. So you do think that there's going to be a definite shift where they're going to start considering this more to create super fans to a certain degree.
Yeah, certainly. And I think outside even just a superfan conversation, I think it's also really important to flag the reason why things like residencies have become more prominent. So Vegas is a big place for residencies, obviously. When I was young, when I thought about an artist doing a Vegas residency, it was a Celine Dion. It was someone that was
Wayne
kind of like,
Newton. Yeah, there's,
right,
yeah,
someone not that wasn't past their prime, but someone that's a bit more mature would be the type of artist that would do a residency. And now we're seeing Usher, we're seeing Adele, we're seeing
yeah,
much younger artists doing these Vegas residencies.
right.
And if you think about it, like logistically, it's partly because their life gets to be in one place. Like you
Exactly.
get to spend 6 months with your kids, with your
Yeah,
family, with your therapist, with your AA group, whatever it is that you need. You get to have
right.
consistency there, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and probably
and
make about the same amount of money, really, right?
and actually probably make more money, to be honest, if you think about how much money it costs to tour, like
Yeah,
how much money you have to physically take everything you have and move it to a new city every single day.
right.
Artists, very large artists, like if you see like what a Beyonce tour looks like, you're moving like cities worth of stuff with you every day.
Totally. Yeah, no, with like on the Taylor Swift piece, like she paid each truck driver like 100K cash as a
Yeah,
bonus because I
yeah,
mean you could imagine. I remember at one point I saw some of the routing for Beyonce. Speaking of Beyonce, and like she was in different parts of the world like within a day or two. So yeah,
mhm,
the cost involved with that travel piece on the artist side is taken down quite a bit if you just have the same venue, the same setups, and one destination which everybody's going to get to at some point, right? Like
exactly.
that's how that makes complete sense. Our shared experience is really at that company Pollen, and I don't want to dwell on what happened there, but you were a strategy director. That's how we got to know each other. From you were working on various projects. Was there a particular project that you were very proud of, or had said to yourself, like, this is what a true travel experience produced the right way might look like?
Oh gosh,
I
I
know I'm
think
going
one of
back
the
in the
work.
memory banks for that one, but I had to
um,
ask.
Yeah, I mean, one that's like I'm very like selfishly like just near and dear to my heart. I didn't actually get to go, unfortunately. But it was one that I loved watching kind of come together
Yeah.
was emo night because obviously, like I just said, yeah, I booked Elton Low when I was 16 years old. So obviously that's a genre and a space I really love.
Yep.
But also it was a product of like it was partially a product of COVID. People were on like Discord channels and like Reddits and things like that, all like talking and like coming together virtually during COVID. And so everyone was able to get together for this massive event and have this whole like experience,
Yeah.
which felt very, very special. This is bringing a lot of nostalgia, bringing a lot of different fans together. I mean, and like a lot of what Colin did was that, right?
Yep.
It was not just, it was like bringing
It's
like
community
identifying
based.
niches, right? Identifying niche the community. I think those are the ones that did the best were the ones that did that. I think some things that didn't do as well was like maybe like big name artists, and that was the pull,
Yep.
as opposed to like random niche thing that people didn't realize were popular enough to have 3,000 people show up to or
Right.
whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
they did, and it was amazing.
No, that one in particular was amazing. I remember it very. I didn't get to go either, but like just the vibe around it, right? Everybody was so happy. I mean, what we had like Machine Gun Kelly shows
Yeah,
up, and you had a bunch of I think prior to Blink 182, I think Travis Barker was there performing, and so
yeah,
it was one of those things that was like almost like lightning in a bottle, and it was amazing that a company like Pollen and people like yourself could pull that together and make it happen. So hopefully do you see anybody else in the space currently that could rival that type of idea from a destination festival type of perspective?
yeah. I mean, of course, the big guys doing it. My understanding is that Live Nation is going to be piecing something together along this route, and also they already doing a lot of the big festivals in the space,
Right.
like so like that's something that I think will continue to happen. One thing I'm really eager to see and really excited about is actually just what the artists put together themselves.
Right.
Artists that have big enough teams and support systems could do this. For example, though obviously some things have clouded how this has gone, but Astroworld by
Right.
Travis Scott is an example of an artist doing an entirely their own vision, their own festival.
Right.
And so I'm hoping we see more artists think, hey, I could do this. I could figure this out. I'll find a partner. We'll make this happen, basically.
Right.
It might be with the big guys, but something like that, I think we should see more of. And then outside of that, I think it also overlooks emo night, for example, and like that world started off with like DJ sets, basically.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people, a lot of promoters that are, especially young promoters that are doing really cool stuff that have the opportunity to figure out how to expand and join artists and their teams and figure out how to make these things a reality also. So I'm hoping to see more of that over the next few years as well.
Yeah, I know that these are all huge points because that kind of flows into my next question. Like, you're probably one of the only people that we could discuss like what are the various components, right? Because what we're talking about is a huge undertaking for maybe a day, maybe 2 days. And I know you did that at a very high level. And so what are some of the things, I mean, you don't have to go through the whole thing, but like what are the considerations and the various departments that you have to work with? Obviously, I was the travel guy, so we went and did our piece, right? But there were so many other moving parts there. So if you were to set this up from the very beginning, what are like, here are the considerations that we would have to look at? Tickets to Travel is always brought to you by Expo Travel. Expo Travel is experience optimized travel, assisting B2B startups and companies with business development and online travel and entertainment ticketing distribution. If your company is looking for ways to boost revenue, increase average order values, or activate your member base with either travel or entertainment ticketing, contact the team at Expo Travel for a consultation now. Visit xpotravel.com. That's xpotravel.com for more information today.
Oh God, there's so many.
No.
Yes. There's a reason why I don't personally book shows anymore. I'll say that.
Yep.
There's a lot of pieces. So like starting off with is securing a venue.
Yep.
If you're securing a outdoor venue, you're starting from scratch, which is a
Green space, blue sky. Yeah.
great in theory because you have a blank canvas, which is amazing. However, you then have to paint that blank canvas
And pay for it.
and and pay for it, most importantly. So that involves building stages, getting permits, making sure that you have all the facilities in place, somewhere people can use the bathroom, somewhere people can get food, drinks, et cetera, et cetera. So like that's the venue securing. If you're doing indoor, you still gotta get the venue secured. You still may have to get the permission you need depending on what the venue is, things along those lines. You then have to secure the artist. You have to talk to their agents to secure the artist, to get that all taken care of, and making sure you get their fees.
And that's really simple and easy to do.
Not to mention, once you secure that, there's a negotiation piece for the artist to figure out like how many people they're bringing with them, where they're going to stay, what calendar of travel they welcome. Like, do they need to fly business class? Do they need to fly first class? All these pieces need to also get worked through. So it's sorting, like you say, your travel bit of it is a big component of it, as well as the hotels. That you're bringing people from a remote or somewhere that is not a huge travel destination in and of itself is sourcing hotels.
Yes.
That you're bringing people to the middle of nowhere where you're like, oh, I found this great hidden gem of a place. Like, good luck getting a hotel for all those people to stay in. Yeah, like people talk about like countries like Albania being the next place to go, and it's like there's not enough hotels for Albania to be the next place to go yet. So figure out that.
So, well, that was the one piece of feedback. Like when people talk about Holland and they say, well, it's just like Firefest. I mean, no. I take offense to that because that guy kind of screwed up just one party when we executed over 70 of them, right? Like, and all of these considerations even from a data perspective, you guys were great at that. Like, let's take a look at what the supply capacity is in this particular destination, what we're gauging. I think the only time we sort of differed really was during seasonality, right? Because I think they're like, hey, I want this to happen on Labor Day weekend. I'm like, great, everybody else does too. So it's going to be more expensive over that time period. But yeah, no, all that is really great to consider because I think a lot of times as fans, you just think, well, I paid my ticket price, I paid my package price, and this thing just sort of happens. And it takes what? At least, you need to give yourself at least a year, right? To make sure that this stuff works.
Ideally, because another component of this, and it's something that I worked at, like I said, I worked at major labels, and one of the things that once you get to a large enough scale, you also have to think about what your impact is of where you're going. And what I mean by that is, let's say you did want to make Albania a thing, is you might need a year to figure out how to make that a thing.
Right.
You might need to talk to the mayors of certain places.
Tourism
you might need
board.
to talk to tourism board, the councils, whatever it might be. And I think I always say there's a difference between following trends and making culture happen.
Right.
And that's a big component of it. It's like, what are you doing to make that work? Making whatever you need to make work. And like, I think if you're really adamant or really caring about a space you want to move into, for example, and for whatever reason why, that's a big component. A year lead time is really handy to be able to actually like make it work.
Yeah. I mean, the more time, the better at the end of the day.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think also when you start to look at the complexity of certain markets and the seasonality, like I mentioned earlier, like sometimes it's super hot or super cold, and trying to find the right type of balance in terms of venue and demand is really, really hard. Switching gears a bit, you're a primary ticketer at Shoobs currently. And so can you provide any interesting examples of where you've seen some of your artists possibly like activate things for fans in venue or during their tours? Because I think that in of itself is the driver of travel in a lot of ways, right? So using the Taylor Swift example or any of those, I think it's been kind of smaller in the consciousness of a fan. But like even in the world of Shoobs, there's probably a few artists who are doing some unique stuff that it would be awesome to hear about.
No, that's a good one. I think of some, and so some sort. I think it doesn't have to be. I wish I had like some like incredibly unique experience, but a lot of times it's just like knowing your fans really well. So
Right.
we had Burna Boy here in the UK last year, and it was the first African artist to ever sell out a UK stadium. Like it was a
Wow.
huge deal, and and that its experience itself. So it was in London, and the experience itself was incredible. Like if you like paid attention, you would realize how incredible it was.
Right.
And what I mean by that is she brought out multiple guest stars. Like at one point, I look on stage and Stormzy is on stage with Burna Boy. You're like,
That's
this is
amazing.
really amazing. Like you're like, oh, I'm glad I'm here to see this, right? They gave out these little wristbands that lit up different colors and things like that. So
Yep.
the fans at the bottom had different colored wristbands that would change as like the song was going through.
Oh, wow.
Very, very cool. But the thing that was most impressive that I think you had to clock it like to really see it is
Yeah.
that every single person that was on stage with Burna Boy for the entirety of the night was black. Which, given that he was the first African artist to sell a UK stadium show,
Meaningful.
that's
Yep.
it really, really resonated.
Yep.
Like that's something that the fans would feel deeply, right?
Right.
Everyone from the kid that handed him his towel to wipe his head to the dancers on stage, every single artist, every single person on that stage was black, and all the guest
Right.
stars as well. And that is something that is like a really unique and special experience that like the fans would remember and would think
Yeah.
about like how special that would have been for them as well as for the artists.
No, I think it's a huge point because I think what a lot of fans don't realize is that because of their large companies in the space, every single component really comes through that large company. So if it's a owned company there's not that consideration, right? They'll just put in this group of people or this contracted person, or they'll fly people in. So some of the conversation I'll have with like tourism boards, they're like, yeah, we'd like to work with the big guys to do a festival of some type. But at the end of the day, they're going to bring in their contracted people when we want to keep the jobs here, right? We want the local economies to benefit that way. So that's really interesting that they took that level of care to say, these are my fans and everything surrounding that is really built for their comfort. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the special bit when I say your fans well. I think people want to get like, they're like, oh, we're going to do this incredible activation. We're going to do all these things. And they
Right.
want to get like really complicated when it's really special to just make sure like that, let's say you have an LGBTQ plus event that
Right.
like the security staff is trained to be able to, like, they have different genders in place, so you can go to the gender of your preference, whatever, like things that are much more simple is also part of the fan experience, not just the splashy things that you can put on like press releases.
Totally. Totally. One of the things I really want to highlight on this podcast too is just careers in general, right? Like you've had a really interesting sort of way to really take command of your career. Like you knew you were a music fan, you wanted to be in the music business. You're doing basically every single component of the music industry to this point, right? Like, so what is some advice you'd give to somebody who's just getting out of school, who wants to break into the music industry? And I'll say my piece about travel, but I think the music industry is a little bit more interesting because I'll tell you this, Christine, I wanted to be in the music industry. And at that point, they didn't really pay very much back then.
They don't pay very much now.
Right. Okay. So then I'm like, what's the second coolest thing that I can actually go big? Travel. Okay. So I'm going to go do travel instead. And that sort of evolved. But like, what is your advice to somebody who wants to get into the music industry?
Yeah, I think it's really tough because the advice I give is that I think some of the stuff that's really hardest is like you have to figure out what you want to do.
Sure.
And usually fairly early on. And the reason why that's the case is because the best and worst thing about the music industry is that anybody can work in the music industry. And so people come to me and they'll say, hey, Christine, I really want to be an artist manager. I'm like, that's great. You need to go find an artist and manage them.
Right.
Those are all the steps. There's no, I don't have any other tips or advice for you. Because there's someone out right now, someone's cousin is managing them right now. And when they go to the agency, they're like, cool, we want to sign this artist. And they already have this manager and we'll train them as a junior manager because they want to come as a package deal. And that's how it goes. Same with A&R, same with marketing. I started a print magazine when I was 16 years old.
Right.
And stuff like
You gotta have hustle, right? Like, I mean, the answer is hard work. Like, define what you want, focus on it, and go after it, right? Like, it's hard to convey that. I think for also people just getting out of school too, because a lot of them would say, well, I'm going to go work for Sony, or I'm going to go work for whoever. And then they figure out like, you're just cognitive. You could.
But that too, that's a whole other component of it that I think people are ill prepared for is like, I think there's two parts of it. There are people that didn't realize they were supposed to be hustling when they were like 16, because they're competing with all these other people that are shocked when they come out of school and realize that they're competing with people with 4 years of experience somehow already. So that's one part. And then the flip side, which is probably the part I rage more than anything, is that like I spent years running my own company essentially at like 19 years old. And so when I come out of school and someone wants to give me like a coordinator position that pays like 20 grand, I'm like, what do you mean?
It's a waste of time, right? Like you could create your own money if you, No, that's that. See, but that people need to hear that. They need to understand that you got to make the decision early and you have to pursue it early. And then I hate to say it, but it's networking too, right? Like you have to know the right people. And so like, have you found that to be the case? I mean, I know the answer, but
so I would flag. So I always say, people always say about the music industry, that's about who you know. And while I would convey that, yes, that is a component of it, I think people miss a step before that no one ever says, like, because it doesn't sound nearly as catchy, where I'm like, it doesn't matter if you have nothing to say to them. And that's the part that I think people lose sight of quite often, because yeah, sure, there's people I know. And then like, that's it. I know them. What's the value exchange or the value add to that conversation? So
value exchange is key. Like, what's in it for me?
Yeah. And there's people that I don't reach out to, even though we know each other, because what are we talking about? And so figure out something like the value add first, and then it's about who you know. And then like, once you get that big meeting or you get to talk to that person, whatever, then you have something to show, a project, an idea, anything to show. But before that, like,
who cares?
Irrelevant. Who cares? You know, they don't know you. Like,
it wasn't until I got to Pollen where I started to meet more music industry people, and it all started with them doing trips. I'm going to take my high school class to Cancun, and we're going to get into clubs, and we're going to do this. And then they would go negotiate the hotel rooms and like, I'm sitting there going, I went through all this professional experience, and these guys are doing it when they're 17, 18. And it's that same hustle that you're talking about that I think people who really gone far in the music industry, they have a really good work ethic. They know how to network and make things happen. And so I don't know if there's an exact equivalent from the travel perspective, but like, I always look at those guys who are doing those group trips as sort of inspiration for doing the same type of hustle. And I think you're hitting it on the head. What else do you think is something that you wish you knew then, now that you know now, that could have changed the course of, or maybe got you there a little bit faster?
Yeah. I think not really thinking nearly as much about like what parts of the industries that you want to look at, because people do that a lot. People will come to me and they'll say like, oh, Christine, I really want to job in the music industry. I'm like, cool, what do you want to do? And they'll say anything. I'm like, you know what a hiring manager does not want to hear is that you're willing to take literally any job that anyone will put in front of you. And like, I try to recontextualize it. Imagine if you were dating, right? And someone was like, oh, what are you looking for in a match? You're like, any man.
Anybody with a pulse is good. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Wouldn't really make that person feel very special, I would imagine.
No, probably not. Yeah. No, that's great feedback. I think people should take that to heart and figure out what they want to do with themselves and find that niche within that industry, because it's vast, right? Like even in my world, do you want to go online? Do you want to go offline, traditional? There's supply, there's distribution, there's all these different pieces of it. But a lot of times people are just like, can I get a free hotel room? And it's like, no, it's not, it doesn't work that way. So again, travel experiences, what I like to, and this has been really interesting and fun to have a chat with you, but if price was no option, money was not an issue at all. Sorry, no issue. What would be your perfect travel experience? Is one that you could produce, or one that you just be a fan of?
Well, gosh, if money was no option, if I was putting something together, so like I grew up on Warped Tour. I went to Warped Tour from I want to say age 16 to the last Warped Tour, which I think I was already living abroad. So I was probably like 26 2007, something along those lines. I went everywhere. If I had unlimited money, I would just bring it back. Like I would bring it back, but add layers to it because Warped Tour started as and when it first started, the tickets were always like $20.
Right.
It started off really, really basic, but taking the experience of when we were young festival, it's a big email and pop-up festival takes place in Vegas every year. Taking that experience and mashing them together, because let me tell you, deeply, no offense to those that love Vegas, but I hate Vegas, and it doesn't actually make sense no offense to those that put it on. I know why it happens there. It does not make sense as a venue for the genre of music. It just makes sense because Vegas can hold a festival in that way.
You can have 100,000 people in the middle of the desert, and you have enough hotel supply.
Yeah. And it makes total sense from that perspective, from a logistics perspective. But if it was if it could be I was piecing together, it would be a pop-punk festival in New Jersey or New York or somewhere where the weather is a bit cooler in the fall.
Right.
And there would be a VIP experience that you can have, and there would be the basic level as well, so still accessible ticket. Then there'd be the whole the meet and greets and the parties and everything like that. And there would also be just nostalgia and talking about things and experiencing things and just playing back old videos and all kinds of just a week-long experience of just getting together with old friends, basically.
Well, that's it. So you have the content down, but what's the destination? If not, we could put it on a cruise ship, I'm sure, and this would be.
That is true. Weird. I mean, an ideal, be a good destination for this. I feel it'd be. The thing about it is it'd definitely be we were all city kids. It wouldn't be the desert. It wouldn't be the beach. It doesn't make we were
interesting.
We weren't those kids.
Even if it was New York City, London, right? In a big convention center or something. Yeah.
Or it'd be I think it'd be something a little bit cooler, spread across the city. So it'd be Amsterdam Dance Event. So ADE is a big conference in Amsterdam, and it takes place across the city in various venues.
Like a South by Southwest, but a little more grimy.
Yeah. Something more like that. I feel it'd be in Amsterdam, maybe even a Berlin or something along those lines. That feels we're gonna get to go hang out in the city, get to do the whole thing, but also get to hang out with all of the different bands. But Warped Tour days are the most fun. Were the days where they were close to a city, so everyone was just kind of wandering around.
Yeah. Man, those were the days, right? You'd go get the concert ticket, you'd hang out, you'd go to a bar, those are the times that we remember. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Well,
So I missed it, obviously.
Yeah, no. I was just thinking it would be cool to do the Warped Tour in Bali or something. You know what I mean? Something very exotic where, because everybody now who were fans like us, right? They've now gotten to a certain place of means where it's wow, that's just mind blowing that we could just be sitting in Hawaii and listening to that type of music, right?
Yeah.
So that could be interesting as well. Yeah.
I love that. That's also a really fun idea. I didn't even about Southeast Asia.
Right? Yeah. I mean, the world is our oyster, Christine. We can come up with anything here in a podcast, that's for sure. But on that note, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope we can have you back at another time to talk more about this subject, because I think it is really evolving. And once again, guys, this is Christine Osazuwa from Shoobs, Chief Strategy Officer. Thank you for your time, Christine. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. We'll talk soon.